Welcome back to the Real Power Podcast. I am so excited for today's guest. We got Mr. Doug Sample today. Doug is the owner and CEO of Sample Companies, a family of businesses which include Greater Living Architecture, Kelly Homes of New York, Claymore Development, and Sample Real Estate. He's been an active leader, partner, contractor, builder, and business consultant within the residential and commercial construction industry for over 20 years. And we've had the honor of working with Doug's team, Greater Living Architecture, for the past couple of years, photographing their beautiful work. And I've always admired Doug from afar. Haven't really gotten to know him too well, but very excited to have him in the studio today to just hear his story, hear his journey into entrepreneurship. I think there's going to be a lot of value for people who specifically want to go into the construction or real estate realm. So hopefully you'll find value in the show today. And with that, Doug, thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. You make me sound pretty important with all that stuff. But yeah, I guess that's me. So yeah, thanks, man.
Let's start from the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey. How did everything start for you?
Well, it's a story. Like everyone has a story. I originally, as a young boy, my boys are all working now. I have 3 boys and a daughter. And I started working for my father when I was probably about 10, 11 years old. My father was a farmer from Canada, Quebec. And he started basically a landscaping and I would say small site development company back in the 60s. I started working with him, in the mid-'80s. I was born in 76, so by 86, 87, I was working with him in the summers. He didn't really have employees and teams the way that we look at a company that has a staff and a team and a service department. It was kind of him with some helpers. He was in the U.S. military as a Canadian citizen, and he was just that type of guy. I mean, farm boy type of mentality. So I'm the oldest of 2. I have a younger sister, so he kind of took me, and I would say he raised me, but he really pushed me, and probably a lot harder than I think I would have ever pushed myself. And at a young age, you don't really realize any of this stuff is happening. You're kind of just, this stinks. Everyone else is out playing all summer, and I spent my summers working. One thing I can say about that, and I've preached it to my 3 boys and my daughter, is, my father always rewarded me. He made me work, and that's the truth. He made me work, forced me to work, but he rewarded me, and simply put, he paid me. And he paid me good, so I could have, at that point, have a bicycle. I had the things that I wanted a 10, 12, 13-year-old would want. And, as things progress, you get older, even at that age, you start to have a little bit more experience. I mean, not type of experience you're thinking of as an experienced manager or laborer, but, you've been doing it for a few years. And, when you hit your teenage years and you have your driver's license, there was a lot more responsibility. And I graduated when I was 17, and I decided to go to SUNY Brockport. I only was out there for about a year. In fact, I think only about a semester. I dropped out the second semester to go back to work.
Yep.
And, getting back to at that time, you don't really know what you're about yet, or I didn't. And you're just kind of working and trying to make things meet. You're trying to work to buy a car or afford your apartment. I know in my late teens, at 18, I wanted a boat, and that was a driving force behind you had the work ethic, but to do it and want to get up and be excited to do it, it was about goals. And at that time, the goals were, they were simple. I look back now at how simple, the goals were, at that age. And I'm like, oh my God, when the hell did it get so complicated? And there's not really a lot of people relying on you. So you have the opportunity to kind of freely, just become the person you're going to become, and then as you segue into your 20s, things start to change again. I was dating my now wife ever since I've been 15, and we broke up for a little bit, and she went to college, and you just kind of, that would probably be the period of time where I was most not really sure which direction I wanted to go. And at this point, I really wasn't involved in home construction or architecture or design or anything like that. It was simply in the trenches, running excavators, running bulldozers, and getting paid. And for me, my period of trying to figure out, what I wanted to do. I mean, in terms of like the big question, what do you want to do with your life? You never really ask yourself that. I never did. And the joke is with my family, I still don't really know what I want to do. You kind of get up and you just do all these different things. And, some days are good, some days are great, some days are awful. But for me, it was just, figuring out what I was good at was more important than that question that is asked amongst young people now. What makes you happy? What's going to make you happy to wake up every day and do? I still don't really ask myself that question. It's like, what am I good at? Can I really excel at? And what can I do that's going to put food on the table and allow me to have the things that I want in life? Travel and security. Big thing with finances, and the driving force behind a lot of this is, ultimately it's security. It's having a little bit more control over your life than, a corporate employee, as you say. Yeah. You're really living and dying by somebody else's rule book. And I still do. And again, another joke we have is, you work for yourself. It's like, I have more people to answer to than, just about anybody I know. As things progressed through my 20s, I started the real estate company almost, I think, 20 years ago this year in 2004. And in 2000, I took over my father's company, Claymore Development. So I've owned that now for 24 years. 4 years later, I started the real estate company, and that started very, very simple. Buying some rental properties, buying a small piece of property, putting a house up. And then, like a lot of things, as you're hearing me say, it kind of went, and then that kind of turned a corner, 2012, 2013, where I started to have some opportunities, and of course, I was younger, and I took them, and then you find yourself building 2, 3, 4, 5 houses a year. You find yourself building houses for clients that are coming to you. And that brings us to, 2016, 2017, when I had the opportunity to meet Gene Lineri, who was the founder of Greater Living Architecture. I think back in 1970, Gene was looking to sell the company, and I had met Gene at a family function, my sister-in-law's 40th birthday party, actually. And jokingly selling his company, and I had used Greater Living Architecture for our architecture firm and the builds that I was doing. Mm-hmm. And we were having success in the real estate. We were having success with Claymore, the development company, through a lot of hard work and just experience and knowing, really having to make adjustments throughout the course of all those years to stay, viable and, not go extinct. And we took the plunge in 2017 to buy Greater Living Architecture. And at the time, I knew nothing about owning an architecture firm. I'm not an architect. I just said, the time is, I was 40. And I said, to my wife, I said, we're just going to do it. I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And, and getting to a point that, my associate or colleague, Gigi over there, was just segueing to, when I was looking at Greater Living Architecture for a year before you actually technically signed the papers and became the owner, so to speak, it really was a culmination of a lot of things why I was there. But Greater Living at that time, and maybe even so now, I think all companies need this, they needed a good owner. They needed a leader. They didn't need another architect, and they didn't need another designer at that time. And and that's a statement that I when I first had purchased the company, people would come up, not so much anymore, but, what the hell are you buying? Why would you buy an architecture? What do you know about that? And I said, it was a company that needed a good owner. And not that I knew that I would be a good owner, but I knew that I would be receptive enough to kind of be skipper of that ship. And, as a good skipper, you're the captain, and the captain is, you're gathering information from, other people on the boat. And then you're making decisions on behalf of everybody. And that's, I think, in my mind, really what separates successful entrepreneurs or successful leaders and business people. You're collectively using your entire team, their opinions, their ideas, and you're not using them all the time. That's not what I'm saying. You're not letting things go haywire, but you're checking the pulse of, your team, and you start to rely more on certain parts of that team. Certain people have a little bit more in-depth ideas and insight when you have a particular problem. You don't go, everybody chime in. This is our problem today. Who has this possible solution? It's not like that. And over time you start to figure out your team's strong points. And every staff member and every team member truly has a different skill set and a strength. And if you can figure that out, all I'm doing is
You're just orchestrating
this stuff, and it's been a pretty good run so far.
I actually didn't even realize that you bought the company. The point about like every business needing a good leader, like you said, you knew nothing about architecture, but here you are running an architecture company, and I think that just goes to show that like there's a skill set, right? There's traits that you need as a leader, as a CEO, to run anything, and those skills, those traits are learnable regardless of what industry you're in. Those points about leadership, I think, are super valuable for anyone listening and whatever you're doing. If you want to just give a brief rundown on each of the companies, so Greater Living, Kelly Homes, Claymore Development, and then Sample Real Estate.
Yeah,
correct?
sure,
And
absolutely.
what each of those
and I'll
do.
keep it brief.
Yeah.
I got a little bit long-winded there, but Greater Living Architecture, GLA, is a company that now, after this backstory, I've owned for 7 going on 8 years. We've grown tremendously. We've opened started and nurtured and successfully have a commercial department at Greater Living, which was not, it just wasn't there when I purchased the company. Volume, production, I think everything is firing on all cylinders. Really proud of what it looks like and how it operates. Like many families, we have some dysfunctions from time to time, but that's part of a family. So Kelly Homes is a company which I started back in 2004 with the real estate company. And that's primarily a company that is, advertised and marketed as our custom home building company. So it has really no legal affiliation to GLA. There has no shared staff. The staff all knows each other. We have social events and things like that, work out of different offices. And Kelly Homes is, again, a custom home building company where we have our own communities. We build custom homes, primarily on the west side of Rochester. Homes from anywhere from $500,000 to $600,000 up to $1.3 million. We average anywhere from 6 to 10 homes a year, and the way we're structured right now, that's pretty much our sweet spot. We're not equipped to build 20, and we'd probably be looking for some clients if we were building 1 or 2. So, and that is in a good spot currently as well. That kind of segues very similar, very closely related and ducktails to Sample Real Estate. Sample Real Estate owns a lot of the property that Kelly Homes builds on. So that kind of gives you a very quick breakdown of Sample Real Estate. And Claymore Development is essentially a version of the company my father started back in the 60s. And Claymore Development, simply put, the development company. Well, what do you develop? We're not in suits. We're not in office buildings. It's bulldozers, backhoes, excavators, putting in sidewalks, digging basements, digging ditches, septic. I mean, it's that type of stuff, and that's always what it is, and that's still what we do. So Claymore Development actually does a lot of the site work, digs the basements, backfills the basements, grades the yards for Kelly Homes. Not so many years ago, but even 5-6 years ago, Claymore Development basically had all its own clients, a lot of other local builders, local developers. That was its bread and butter, and we did very little work for ourselves, as we call it, Kelly Homes. And over the last 6 to 7, more so the last 3 or 4 years, we're almost 95% working on our own jobs, Claymore Development, and occasionally working for some very good clients that we enjoy working for 5 to say 15% of the year.
Well, that's a great breakdown. And it's so smart. I mean, you hear from people that it's hard to grow multiple businesses at the same time, but what's so smart about what you're doing is it's an ecosystem that you're building, and all your businesses feed off of each other in a certain way. It's not like you're starting something completely different, like a dentist or something, and going completely 180. Everything you're doing feeds off of each other. And I think that's super smart and the way to do it if you want to do multiple things at once.
Yeah, they all work together, and in some ways, Claymore being where I started, we'll say, we were working for builders, and we were working for builders that honestly I didn't think was doing a good job. And the cliche, I can do this better. Well, I tried it and I didn't, and then I did, and then I got that figured out. And then you move to, the architectural portion of it. You're hiring architects and designers to design these homes, and the opportunity came about. It was just another piece of that puzzle. I mean, the only scary part about all that being, symbiotic and working together is, it does lack a little bit of diversity.
All your eggs are in one basket.
In terms of, where you're pulling where these companies are pulling their dollars from.
Sure.
They're basically all pulling them from this same big bucket with little buckets, real estate related activities and things like that. So,
So at this current point in time, about how many people do you have working in all your companies across the board?
Real true employees, we probably have about anywhere from 18 to 22 at any time. Subcontractors, dedicated subcontractors that only work for us, we have upwards of 12 to 15. That varies dramatically based on the state of the union and where we are with certain projects and communities.
What have you learned about, and I know you already touched on it, but leadership and really cultivating a good culture and building a solid team around you?
That's the intangible. And, I've really been lucky to have a lot of good people around me. And I don't know whether it's luck or I do believe there's a degree of attraction, on behalf of free-thinking people that are walking around wanting, like someone like Gigi. People have a choice on who they work for, and at certain levels and in certain creative professions, you see that a little bit more. You really see team members and staff, when you talk to them, they really want to be working for someone that they believe in what they're doing, and most importantly, they trust me.
Yeah.
That's the big thing that segues back to, I use the term skipper. They have to trust you, and I think building that trust, in my case, it always has to happen organically.
Yes.
You can't just walk into, and GLA was a perfect example, walking into a room and every question that they asked me, the answer was the same. Let's just keep doing whatever you guys have been doing. What do you think? And my question would be, what do you think we should do?
Yeah.
And trust was built over a period of time, and it wasn't a matter of months. It was built over a matter of months, little by little, but it was just piling on decision-making and not screwing up, and your team realizing that, you're not steering them into a storm. Wow, the new guy isn't going to drive us off a cliff. But that process, when you talk in terms of skill sets of different team members, that in itself, I think if I could, personify what I'm best at, it's probably that. It's not really, building a home all the time, and it's not really, running machinery, which in terms, in my past, that's what you think you're good at. I'm really good at that. As things evolve, and I'm in my later 40s now, and you've repeated some of this stuff, you can kind of sit back, which I never sit back, but you can kind of look at the situation and realize it is a product of, not all, but a lot of the decisions I make and who I empower and who I get my information from in my team and their trust in me is really the secret to the success. You're really just a ringleader, but you gotta know what you're doing at the same time, and you've also got to be able to steer your team as much as you trust them out of the ditch when they're heading into the ditch.
Yeah.
And I head into the ditch occasionally, and there's people in my life, they question you, and it's good to be questioned. I'm the type of leader. I like to be, not daily and not about certain things, but I don't mind being questioned if it's a sincerely, a question. If it's a sarcastic, why the hell are you doing that? That's different than a question. It's not
Yeah.
really a constructive question.
Yep.
So a lot of trust.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great answer. And the reason I ask it is more selfishly because, I'm trying to become a better leader. I have a team around me now. And what you just said about like asking for input, you don't have all the answers as one person. Like multiple brains are better than one. And I've had to really put my ego aside too and let my team like say things and say ideas that maybe I didn't even think of. And then as a leader, you have to take in all the input and then you make the final decision and hopefully the best decision for the business. So I think it's just a constant learning process. And if you're getting better year after year as a leader, I think you're doing all right.
As you get older, there's a little bit more self-actualization. And as you've screwed up more and more, and as you occasionally succeed more and more, I was talking with my wife just literally just the other day. You start to rely as you get older. You rely a lot more on yourself, and you realize, and you're very comfortable with what you're capable of, and you're also very knowing and aware of what you're not good at. And I think that is almost, or more important in some cases, knowing what you're not good at and not steering away from it, but getting assistance with it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're not, the skipper of the ship is not the mechanic.
Yeah.
But you need the mechanic just as valuable as the guy steering the ship.
Yeah.
And if you look at things like that, you kind of become very humble, and, the ego thing goes away. It's gone away for me, years ago. There just isn't any place for it. But I do know leaders that lead with an iron fist. They don't want input. I'm here for a reason. If you don't do it my way, you get out. And they have success, some of them despite themselves. But, and I've had this conversation with my father even, and that's kind of how he ran his show. And for me, that's just not how I'm going to live my life. And for me, it takes too much energy to be that much of my way or the highway sort of guy. And it's just not in my nature, and
Yeah.
it can be confused with being naive at times, but.
Sure. Well, to your point, I mean, yes, you can succeed, and there are leaders that succeed that way, but how do the people around you feel about you? You know what I mean? That's a whole nother thing. Like, yes, business is one thing and it's great, but how do people view you as a human being? And that's something that I think as I'm, getting older, I want to be viewed as someone who cares about my employees' personal lives and not just them as a number in a machine. We're always, a growing younger generation business. We're go, 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 like get things done. How are we going to grow? But I'm starting to take the time to realize, like, I need to check in. How's life? Like, what are you doing for fun? Like, what vacations are you going on soon? And I think that's so missed in today's culture, especially, with the rise of like entrepreneurship being cool and everything. Just there's soft skills that you need as an entrepreneur to succeed, and I'm continuing to learn those as well.
Very, very important stuff.
Yeah.
Very important stuff.
What would you say, if you had to narrow it down, what's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned in entrepreneurship?
Lesson 1, 2, and 3 is failing.
Fail.
And 4. Failure's humbling. So, I mean, when you fail, the first emotion, for me anyways, is, there is a degree of embarrassment. Then it reverts to, damage control. And then it kind of morphs into righting the ship, and is there a future with this idea, or am I just really, not pointed in the right direction? What comes out of failure is everything. What comes out of winning is very little other than money.
Yeah.
In this world, people love you when you're winning, and as we know, it's just people, you perceive differently when you're losing. Learning that failing is okay after having done it, me personally, on a big scale a couple of times. One, you want to avoid it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, you're not purposely trying to fail. I'm going to teach myself a lesson. Let's just drive this thing right into the wall. When you're kind of just out there, making decisions, not really knowing what the outcome's going to be, even with a team of people helping you, your chin's wide open, and it doesn't always work out. And I think getting into, even more recent years with some of my ventures, or call them ideas, where we put resources, where we take people like Gigi and other team members, and we allocate resources, talented people, basically to orchestrate and implement my ideas. Again, it gets back to a little bit more of a collective on making those decisions. And what's nice about that is if there is stress fractures or signs of this isn't going the way it's planned, it was to a degree a collective decision, although I'm steering the ship. Whereas when you're younger, a lot of these things, you don't have the resources around you to help make these decisions. And a lot of times the resources around you when you're younger are more of a mentor, not tutoring, but just lesson giving sort of advice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that because X, Y, and Z. It's like the advice I seek out now and I get is, okay, if we're going to do this, you might want to think about X, Y, and Z. And as, in age and experience, there's no substitute for it.
Yeah.
You really avoid those huge failures. There's little things not going right is not necessarily a failure, but there's directions you go that always aren't ultimately the direction you really should be going. You kind of write the course. The team is involved in helping you write the course, and the team's also involved in telling you when we don't need to pump the brakes, but you better take your foot off the gas, and we better figure some of these things out before we keep going 100 miles an hour down the road with us. So decision-making as you get older, especially when you surround yourself with talented people, it never becomes easier, but it becomes a quantifiable process instead of, we're going to go for it, and it's going to work because I'm smart and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like that has happened, but also there's been more times it hasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And I think the lesson I take away from that is and you hear from everyone, failure is part of the process, but to your point, you don't want to
it sucks.
It sucks, and you don't have to you don't have to fail. You can learn from people ahead of you, and I think that's the approach I'm trying to take every day. Is all right, this path that I'm on, who can I seek out that's ahead of me, that's better than me, and help me avoid the landmines along the way, because you are going to fail inevitably, regardless of how much information you seek out. And like you said, experience is the biggest lesson. But learning to seek that out and understand that there's always someone who's done it before you. So why not learn and even pay money to learn from those people and educate and coach yourself to avoid those failures?
You're correct, but your story is going to be different than all theirs.
Sure,
and there's going to be anybody that has the same story as you. There's not going to be there's not going to be anybody that has the same story of anybody.
Yep.
Learning those real, I don't want to say obvious because they weren't to the person that they ran into, but, learning, following the path of somebody else in terms of, what did they do? What do I know that won't work? Why didn't it work? That's being diligent. That's always a good part of making decisions. But, you always have to realize your spice and your flavor, just the way you might react to people's decisions, or the way you might look at somebody.
Yeah.
It's going to change your trajectory
million different
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's just following a rule book for some of these things is good to have a rule book. It's good to have a whole bunch of information. You need to have it.
Yeah.
But always remember, every little decision you make and how you treat somebody on a Thursday afternoon could impact you a year from now tremendously, positively or negatively.
Yeah.
Live your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Live your life.
Yeah. Your successes and failures are the compounding of the decisions that you make every day.
Correct. Culmination of your decisions.
100%.
That's your life.
In order to succeed as an entrepreneur, in my mind, you have to have a very strong mentality. What do you do in your own life to cultivate a strong mindset, habits, routines,
Tito's? You have to be strong, but I mean, and I don't, again, I've said this before, it sounds corny, but I don't always think of myself as the strongest or smartest person in the room. In fact, I very rarely do. You find yourself, I find myself at times very vulnerable. And I've said the statement before, don't confuse kindness with naive. I'm kind. I'm not naive most of the time. The best thing not the best thing for everybody, but works for me is, I spend a lot of time with my wife. And when I'm not working, I'm very grounded, and, with the kids. And I said I didn't even like kids, and I have 4 kids. But, I don't spend a lot of time out late nights. It's kind of a real superficial answer, but I get done with work, I go home, I cook. I do all the cooking. I do happy hour with my wife and a couple of friends, and I kind of keep, stability, I think, is super, super important, especially when you've got so many people in your life that you're affecting, and Gigi's been the recipient of that, and early on, years ago, many years ago, it occurred to me, because it was a reoccurring issue, was, I have a bad day and I can blow up a lot more things than most people. And I don't mean it as you want to, but you just walk around being your miserable self, pissing and moaning. I mean, you ruin a lot of people's days, and I've learned that. So, you have to control that, and you need to be well rested. Again, I know it's a real superficial answer.
Rest.
Sleep. Bed at 9 o'clock.
No, I'm really glad you touched on that, because these days, like hustle culture, like, oh, you don't need to sleep, just work your ass off. But
Doug needs to sleep.
Cam needs to sleep too.
Yeah, I need to sleep.
I need my beauty sleep.
So,
yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm the same. I mean, simple man. I like being with my wife outside of work. That's how I recharge. And especially now, like the past 5 years, I've just been working nonstop, 80, 100-hour weeks to like get this ship going. And now I have a team around me. I can kind of start to pull back a little bit and have a little bit better work-life balance. But again, I think it's different for everyone.
it is. It depends on your partner.
Yep.
Having a good partner is everything.
Yeah.
Without a good partner, you're doomed. You really are. And, the big D word, as we all know, divorce. I mean, I can't tell you how many guys, their story would have been a very different story, if their lives would have been in a different direction with their partner. And we do choose our partners.
Yeah.
We don't choose too many things in life. People get to choose their partners. And as we know, we're getting off business topic, but, a lot of people choose the wrong partners. And, living and eating and breathing with someone who's not really jiving with you, and you're not jiving with them either most of the time. I mean, it kind of rots the entrepreneurial, the creativity of any human being. It just rots it from the inside out until there's nothing left. And I'm not talking about nothing left in terms of financial resources. You can't think straight, and you wake up not able to focus. You go to bed annoyed and angry, and you just repeat and repeat and repeat, so it kind of touches on your last question. Stable, have a stable environment, and you don't just have one. You have to create it. Stay away from shit that's going to cause you a problem, and people, for that matter.
Stay away from it, people. Stay away from it. We'll start to transition kind of out of the business stuff. And I know you already touched on it, but what else do you do for fun? Cooking, hanging out with your family, anything else?
I mean, cooking's a big thing. This time of year, not so much because of the heat, but working. I really enjoy certain days when I don't have a schedule and I can pop around to jobs. Tomorrow is one of those days. My VP, Lindsay, who I love dearly, she's off. And I always joke when she's off, it's the same as me being off, because, the phone's a lot more quiet. I meet my wife, Kelly, every Friday for happy hour. We do lunch, on Saturdays. I mean, the big thing is my gardens, my flowers. I love growing flowers. I do my vegetable garden. I have a place in Costa Rica and I just spend all winter with gardens and flowers. And I think that's kind of my happy place.
Nice. Costa Rica. My wife and this is our year. We're traveling a lot more, but we're trying to get to everywhere in the States before we start to go outside the country.
Yeah, I didn't. I wish I would have.
Yeah.
I would say, simple things. I started golfing a little bit last year because my one son picked it up, and it was really the driving force, and it was time with him. Sticking true to the evolution of anger management, not even anger management, that's too aggressive, but getting frustrated with things. You know, I'm not a good golfer. I wouldn't even call myself a golfer, but I go out and I have fun, and I don't get upset anymore the way I used to
Yeah.
when I was in my 20s with golf. I just don't.
That's me right now, by the way.
And I just
Yeah.
go out, you hit it around. There's a degree of embarrassment sometimes. I mean, that would be my only regret with golf. That's why I like golfing with my sons, because they're worse than me and don't really care what I do.
I saw something the other day on Twitter. It was like, the reason we as men get so frustrated in golf is because at any moment we can hit a professional level shot, and then the rest of the game we play like shit.
Yeah.
So that messes with your mind.
Yeah. You need one good shot on a 9-hole round, and it'll keep you coming back.
That's right.
But
That's right.
it can be embarrassing as a guy. You want to, sports, and you go out. No one wants to be hacking away at the ball in front of 3 other guys.
Yeah.
Half the time you don't know 2 of them. Your buddy might be with you. So
Yeah.
it's just human nature. But
Yep.
a couple cocktails usually.
There you
solve
go.
That.
Yep. Let's talk goals for the future. Where do you see your businesses going in the next couple of years? Long-term vision for everything.
It's a really good question. The question remains. You don't know. What I have learned, even, and again, I had this conversation last night. I was having chicken wings with Kelly. My son was at camp, and we had to pick him up football camp, so we went somewhere quick for like an hour and sat. And how different this year looks mid-August versus last year. I mean, the new community that we started this spring, I didn't own the property a year ago, and I didn't have any idea I would even have an opportunity to own this property. And we don't need to get into details of that, but what time has taught me is you just never know what's going to be around the corner. And that's not a negative statement. It's, sometimes you don't know really what the next step is going to be. And as long as you just keep walking and breathing and bluntly don't screw things up, things present themselves. And that's kind of the direction I've gone for the last 20 years. And it's not blind of, let's just see what happens tomorrow. There's a lot of planning. But in terms of the succession plan, you'd like to see the companies carry on after me. After whether I retire or, God forbid, something happens, you like to have the thought, as I sit here and even as I drive around, that everything wouldn't stop for a lot of reasons. Mainly for my team. We've done a really good job creating scenarios in our operations where I can be there or not be there for months at a time, and life goes on. Will it look different? Yes. Any succession plan, no matter, regardless of how well it's planned out, and you've got everything dotted, check, thumbs up, okay, let's go. It's going to be different when I'm not there. And that's not necessarily a negative. It could go to the moon. I don't think a lot. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about what this is going to look like in 5 or 10 years. I spend all my time thinking about what this is going to look like a month or 2 or a year from now. I just think it's just how I run things. I very rarely look deeply and really strategically at where are we going to be in 5 years. Code changes, president's changing every 4 years, interest rates all over the board, all these things that affect me, that affect a lot of people. You don't really know what they're going to be even a year from now. Mm-hmm. We don't know who's going to be in the White House this fall or next January. And I just think it's best to set your goals, short-term / long-term, most people short-term, long-term, like 5 to 7 years, 6 to 9 months, 9 months to a year and a half.
Yeah.
Keep everything moving, keep everything strong, keep your debt low. So if something does happen to me, whether it's planned or unplanned, and this is important, you're not leaving the next person, male or female, a mess. You're not leaving them in a situation where they're behind the 8 ball as soon as they get behind the steering wheel. And I think in terms of a goal, it's probably not the answer you're looking for, but to have these companies debt-free is really where you, as an owner, as this particular owner, where I really want things to be. That's my goal.
Yeah.
In a roundabout way. And it took me a minute to even get there because it's so inherent that that's how I think about it. But that's really the goal right now. Get these companies where they float, they're cruising down the road and someone else can come in. And when they're debt free and not cumbersome and light on their feet, it allows the next person to come in and make some changes and make some mistakes. And there's going to be some. There's going to be people maybe leave or quit or retire. It just leaves them in a position where it's going to give them some time to get it figured out.
Yeah.
Because no matter who they are, you're stepping into a new role. And Gene Lanieri with Greater Living, and I'm going on and on about this, but he left me in a situation very similar, and my father did with Claymore. They had the company to a point where I took over something that was very healthy, and it allowed me to experiment is not really the right word, but make subtle changes and put your touches on it, which any owner or entrepreneur is going to do, and have a little bit of leeway there. If it's not exactly the way you wanted it to look or smell, you don't hit a brick wall, 2 months after acquisition. So long answer, but
Yeah, that was great. Love that. And to your point about like long-term goals are great and you can set that big vision, but you just don't know, like anything can happen in a couple of years. And it's like the quote, the Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And
until the phone rings, I walk out
until
of this
the
room.
phone rings.
There could be a phone call sitting on that phone right now that's going to change my life.
That's right. That's right.
Don't dwell on it, but focus on today.
All right, we'll wrap up here. Parting wisdom for that young, hungry entrepreneur who wants to make things happen, regardless of what path they choose to go down. What do you want to leave our audience with today?
Real simple stuff. I was a ditch digger. Work hard. We've talked about it multiple times. To really succeed and get ahead in this world now, no matter what industry you're in, regardless of what industry you're in, you really have to listen to people. You don't have to do what they say. That's not what I'm implying. You really have to, even the assholes, you gotta listen to people. And it paints the whole landscape that you're gonna end up navigating, and don't be a dick. Treat people with respect, even if you don't respect them sometimes. It's a long road.
Yeah.
And, regardless of what market you're in, it doesn't pay any sort of dividend to tee off on people, as frustrated as you get, and it's not necessarily like this, advice of do this, do that, and you're going to wind up at the top, but they're just things that I wish more people would implement, and you see really talented people and they have some of these flaws and they just anger issues and, just relax and you're going to get where you need to get if you keep working hard.
That was great. Don't be a dick, people.
Don't be a dick.
Any favorite book or books that have had a profound impact on your life, professionally or personally? I don't know if you're a big reader.
I'm not a big reader. Probably the single largest impact on my life was my father. He was tough. He still is, and not very compassionate, not very understanding with failure, and you kind of grow up in that environment, and it was a great environment, great household, but, you kind of learn. You either go one of two ways. I've always said this. You're raised by someone who's very stern, my way or the highway sort of guy. Inherently, you're either going to wind up just like them or you're going to be the polar opposite. You're going to listen to everybody. You're going to just hear every story anybody has to say. You're going to believe people when more than likely they're lying to you, and and that's kind of the story with my father and I, but he's why I'm here today.
Awesome.
My mother, of course, but my father is pretty much my mentor, and he's still around.
Love it. It's a beautiful thing. Doug, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. It's been great.
Let's plug anything you want to plug, website, social media, your new development going on.
People want to work with us because they want to work with us.
Yes.
And it's a really flattering feeling. Competing realtors, I know from ours just the other day, they said people are paying more for our product in some case, our homes, and they're living in places, and some of our lots are not the most desirable, still beautiful. And this was a realtor naysaying, but she just couldn't get her head around why some of these things were happening in our camp, positive things, and basements going and things. And, our realtor, Rick Borelli, who I'll
Rick.
give him a plug. Rick's awesome.
Shout out to Rick.
Rick simply says, these people want to build with Kelly Homes. They want to build with Lindsay and Doug and Gigi. That's just all there is to it.
Yeah.
And that's what you're buying.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're going to get a house, with any of these people you build for, but they really want the relationship. And they want to go through the 1 year experience. And call it a year from the time we meet, if not longer. They want to go through that 1 year experience with our team. And that's super flattering.
Love it. My wife and I are thinking about building. Kelly Homes will be the first that we go to when we go through that process. GLA is known for their home plans, whether it's residential, commercial. Their tagline is "Let's make plans." So guys, if you need a home, reach out to them. They're the people. Doug, thank you again for coming on today.
Absolutely.
Your story is inspiring. There's so many gold nuggets that you shared today. I think our audience
nuggets. I don't know if they're gold. But
No, I think our audience will get a lot of value out of it, and
Awesome.
just very, very honored to have you here. So
That's great. I appreciate you thinking of me. Honestly, that's really cool. Thank you.
absolutely. Well, guys, I hope you found value in the show, and please share it with an aspiring entrepreneur if you know one. Likes and shares help the show grow. Other than that, we will see you in the next episode. Peace.